This NFL offseason has been a wild one for sure, and I think right before the draft, this is a good time to go ahead and rank every NFL team's offseason so far. And here are the tiers. I really don't have to explain too much because they're self explanatory. We have spectacular, great, good, average, bad, and trash. First thing we have up is the Arizona Cardinals. They didn't make too many big splashes besides getting Josh Sweat for a 4-year deal around $76 million. They didn't lose anybody, and they retained all their players and re-signed some of their starters. And Josh Sweat, he can give you around 8 to 9 to 10 sacks per season, and the Cardinals defense last year was not very good for most of that season. So I'm going to have their offseason as good because they didn't lose anybody, so that's a plus. Next thing we have is the Falcons. If you watched last week's episode, I already ranted about it now. We did get Leonard Floyd, but that's about it. We lost Drew Dowman. We lost Grady Jarrett. We re-signed Jake Matthews to restructure his contract. We also just now lost Richie Grant. This offseason's been terrible, and we're going to be terrible next year. And I have us as trash. Next thing we have is the Baltimore Ravens. They did get DeAndre Hopkins, but they lost Brandon Stevens, Patrick, I can't remember how to say his name, but they did re-sign Ronnie Stanley, which is huge for them. Now, DeAndre Hopkins wasn't super productive with the Chiefs, but he's still a decent option, but the Ravens run the ball for the majority of the time, so the receivers are never going to be a big part of the offense, especially since DeAndre Hopkins won't be receiver number one with Zay Flowers. So I have this off all season also as good because re-signing Ronnie Stanley and getting Lamar Jackson some weapons is always a plus. Next thing we have is Buffalo Bills. Now, they re-signed Josh Allen to a very decent contract, especially since he's the MVP. He's not going to be the highest paid quarterback, so that's a bargain. They re-signed Greg. I don't even remember how to say his name. They also got Shakir back, so that's great. Now, they did lose Mac Hollins, and they did lose Von Miller, but they did get Joey Bosa. Now, Joey Bosa is older, and he has a very injury-prone career so far in the NFL, so he's not the player he used to be, and he's not going to be as dominant, so he's kind of more of a name than he really is the player at this point. So I'm going to have the Buffalo Bills once again at good, mainly because they got their edge threat secured in Greg, and they also got Josh Allen to a really good contract. Next thing we have is the Carolina Panthers. Their big offseason move was re-signing J.C. Horn, who I didn't think he was worth that money, and that's a big reason why I'm going to have them in the average range. They didn't do crazy amount of much, but I feel like they overpay for J.C. Horn and what he's worth, and they just overall haven't really got totally better, but the Panthers are not trying to compete anyway, so it really doesn't matter. All they care about really is the draft. Now, the next thing we have is the Chicago Bears. I'm not even going to sugarcoat this one. They're spectacular. I mean, they beefed up their offensive line, which was their major issue for the entire season pretty much. They got Joe Tooney, they got Drew Dowman from us, they got Grady Jarrett also from us, and they really didn't lose too many people. So Caleb Williams is on the hot seat right now. He's got to perform because now he actually has an offensive line, so there's really no excuses. And they also got Ben Johnson to call plays for him, so Caleb, it's time to play good. Next thing we have is the Bengals. Now, they've made headlines this offseason because they re-signed not only Jamar Chase, but now T. Higgins. Now, I did see something that said like that Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins is taking up like almost 50% of the total cap space. So that's going to hinder the roster a lot. But the Bengals waited too long to re-sign all these players, and that's why the price just keeps going up and up and up. And I don't understand. So it's just bad business by the Bengals. But I liked re-signing them because you need to keep Joe Burrow happy, in my opinion. Now, that defense still needs some work. So I'm going to put the Bengals actually in great. I know people are criticizing them right now. Mainly, I'm putting them in the great because Joe Burrow is going to be happy now. But they still need to bolster up that defense. So hopefully they can hit on draft picks in the draft because that's really how you make your team good is through draft picks like we see with the Eagles last year. So hopefully the Bengals can do that because I love watching Joe Burrow play and the electrifying offenses that they can have. Next thing we have is the Cleveland Browns. Now they re-signed Myles Garrett. He's not demanding a trade, but they paid him a boatload of money. So I'm actually going to have them in the average because, I mean, their big addition was Kenny Pickett. So, I mean, that's not really too much. They're still paying Deshaun Watson a bajillion dollars, so that's going to hinder their team. And they're still looking for a quarterback, obviously, unless you think Kenny Pickett's going to be anything. So I'm very interested to see if they get somebody in the draft or not. but I have them in the average tier. Next team up we have is the Dallas Cowboys. Now, Jerry Jones, once again, was probably sleeping throughout the entire offseason because he has made absolutely no moves. They need a running back, and they get Javonte Williams, who hasn't been good for about 2 or 3 years now. Getting Kenneth Murray was a good move, in my opinion. That's going to save them from not being in the trash range, because I think Kenneth Murray can actually be a good linebacker, and they needed some linebacker help. Now, they did resign their defensive tackle, Us, and they got Turpin back, so that's good. And they also restructured Dak Prescott and CeeDee Lamb contracts, so that's good. But they still haven't paid Micah Parsons yet, which they need to do immediately because the price is just going to keep going up and up by the second. And the locker room just seems to be toxic right now, and everything surrounding the Cowboys like it always is, because DeMarcus Lawrence was talking trash after he left to go to the Seahawks. So I'm sure there'll be in news headlines throughout the entire year because they're America's team, obviously. But Jerry Jones is basically ruining this team, but that's no shocker and not big news as of late. Next thing we have is the Denver Broncos. Now, I'm going to actually put the Denver Broncos in spectacular. Why? Because they got Hufanga and they got Greenlaw. And they also got Evan Ingram, who Evan Ingram can be a serviceable tight end at times. But I really like Greenlaw. Now, he is coming off of an Achilles tear, but he is really good and a great off-ball linebacker. And Hufanga could ever get healthy and he get back to what he was, because I mean, he made the first team All-Pro, if I remember correctly. And the Denver Broncos defense was already really good last year, and they just got 2 big pieces, in my opinion. And I don't expect Bo Nix to get worse. I expect him to stay the same or even get better. And the Sean Payton-led offense is just going to amplify what Bo Nix can do. So I really like the Broncos next season, and I think if they crush the draft, that they could actually be making a play towards a high seed in the AFC next year. Next thing we have is the Detroit Lions. Now, they got DJ Reed. They re-signed Marcus Davenport. Their big thing is they need to stay healthy because they were ravaged by injuries last year with their defense in the playoff run. Now, they did lose Carlton Davis, and they also had to release Darius Smith, but he wasn't really that much of anything last year. They haven't made real big splashes, but that's because they're going to have to pay a lot of people in the near future. But the big thing for them is going to be about the coordinators, because we saw what could happen to a team when you don't have coordinators, because look at the Eagles a few years ago when they completely fell apart during the second half of the season. So that's a big question mark, but I'm sure the culture in Detroit and the talent that they already have will carry them. So I have them in average. They really haven't done anything. Next thing we have is the Green Bay Packers. Now, they got Aaron Banks. I'm not too familiar with him, but from what Pro Football Focus and everything says, they say he's a really good lineman, so I'll give him credit for that. They did lose former Georgia Bulldog Eric Stokes, which makes me mad. But they also lost A.J. Dillon, but they have Josh Jacobs, so they're completely fine on that. And they just signed one of my favorite Georgia players of all time, Miko Hardman, so you get some bonus points for that one. But they haven't really made too big of moves beside Aaron Banks, but I'm not really sure about him. So I'm going to put them in the good category. Next thing we have is the Houston Texans. Now, the Texans, I don't really know what they're doing because their biggest need was offensive line, and they traded away one of the best left tackles in the league. So I'm not really sure about that one. They got Christian Kirk, and I'm not the biggest Christian Kirk fan. So with everything I just said, I would have put them in trash, but getting C.J. Gardner-Johnson, in my opinion, is very good, and he's going to help that defense really good, even though his antics off the field and stuff like that is bad. He's still a very good player in the right system, and I think D'Amico Ryans to get the best out of him because he is a very good defensive coach. And I think C.J. Stroud's going to have a bounce-back season next year, so I think they'll be fine, but they still need to address the offensive line in the draft maybe, or if there's an available free agent that could also help. But I have them in the bad tier. Not as bad as the Falcons, but I have them in the bad tier. Next thing we have is the Colts. Now, they got Charvarius Ward, which I forgot to mention a few episodes ago. And they also got Daniel Jones, and he actually may take Anthony Richardson's job because Anthony Richardson is just not a good quarterback in my opinion. He's never going to be a good quarterback. If you take a look at his previous experience and how he's played, it's just bad. He makes inaccurate throws, and he makes bad decisions with the football, and not to mention he's injury prone. So I don't think he's ever going to amount to anything. So I wouldn't be surprised if Daniel Jones wins the QB battle. But they also re-signed Braden Smith, who's a good tackle, but they did lose their center, so that's going to hurt. They really haven't done too much in my opinion. Now, Charvarius Ward is good, so I have them in the average tier. Next thing we have is the Jacksonville Jaguars. Really haven't done anything besides get Patrick, the offensive lineman from the Ravens, was their big acquisition, but nothing really else besides Jordan Lewis, who's an all-right corner. Now, they traded away Christian Kirk, but I wasn't the biggest Christian Kirk fan anyway, and you have Brian Thomas Jr., who's absolutely electric, so you don't have to worry about receiver in my opinion. But the big thing is going to be obviously if Trevor Lawrence can bounce back from last year having a down year and also getting hurt. But they haven't really made big moves, so I have them in the average tier. Next thing we have is the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, they got Jalon Moore. Also, I'm not very familiar with him. They did get Elijah Mitchell, which I really like. And they also franchise tagged Trey Smith. They got a very underrated linebacker, Nick Bolton. They re-signed him. And they re-signed Hollywood Brown. And they also brought back Juju, because Juju always is on the Chiefs for some reason. But they did trade away Joe Thuney, which I was scratching my head over. And they got rid of Justin Reed, and DeAndre Hopkins signed with another team. So it's a very mixed offseason. They've made some good moves, but they also made some, like, what are you doing moves. I'm going to put them in the good tier because Nick Bolton was actually a very good signing, and you kept Trey Smith, and also Travis Kelce's coming back, and Rashee Rice should make a full recovery. So I'm sure the Kansas City Chiefs offense will be fine, but the tackle position still needs to be addressed at some point. Maybe Jalon Moore can fill in that role, but I'm not really sure. Next thing we have is the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, they just got Geno Smith. They got Jeremy Chin, Alex Kappa, and Eric Stokes, so that's really good in my opinion. And they also re-signed Max Crosby. Now, it was a pretty penny, but Max Crosby is worth it because he's a top, 5'4" edge rusher in the league. So that's very good. Geno Smith is obviously up there in age, so he's not going to be your franchise quarterback. But to mentor, maybe they get a quarterback in the draft, maybe if Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward happens to slide for some reason. But Geno Smith can also be a stopgap at quarterback. He can give you some good quarterback play. So I have them in the good category. Next thing we have is the Los Angeles Chargers. Now, they did just get Najee Harris, and they also re-signed Khalil Mack, but they had to let Joey Bosa go. Which Joey Bosa, like I said earlier, it's just a name at this point, and he was way too much money for the Chargers because they're still in a cap deficit. But Justin Herbert, you need to step it up. Jim Harbaugh is going to coach his team very well, and they're going to be in the mix for a playoff spot every year. Jim Harbaugh is basically coaching. So I have them as well actually I'm gonna put them in the good because I actually do like Najee Harris, and Jim Harbaugh likes to run the ball, and they have a decent offensive line. But Justin Herbert, you gotta win a playoff game at some point. Come on, man. Next thing we have is the Rams. Now they did get Devontae Adams. He can be a diva at times, but with Matthew Stafford, I think he's gonna thrive. And with Sean McVay calling plays, they also re-signed Matthew Stafford, which I still think he has a lot more years at very good quarterback play, and he might be a top 5 quarterback still when he's healthy. Now, they did lose Jonathan Jackson, and they had to release Cooper Kupp, and they lost Michael Hecht. So that is really the only reason why I don't have them in the spectacular tier, because I think Devontae Adams was a really good move. But losing all those players, I'm going to have to put them in the great category. Next thing we have is the Miami Dolphins. Now, when your biggest and headline move is bringing in Zach Wilson, I think you're going to be in the trash category. They lost Javon Holland to the Giants, which I did not love, and they really haven't done anything to address the safety position. So I really don't know what they're doing. Tyreek Hill, maybe he still wants to be there. I don't know. And Tua's still injury prone, and I hope nothing happens to him because concussions and head injuries are a real thing, and I don't want anything to happen because he's a good guy. But I think the Miami Dolphins are in the trash category. Now, they're not worse than the Falcons, but they are in the trash category. Next thing we have is the Minnesota Vikings. Now, they got Jonathan Allen, they got Javon Hart, Jordan Mason, they re-signed Aaron Jones and Byron Murphy, which are all great players, and they're going to help them a lot next year. But I think the biggest move is not signing Sam Darnold to a humongous contract when you know he's not worth it, and you know he was just benefiting from the Kevin O'Connell system and all the weapons around him. So because they did not have to pay Sam Darnold and they're going with J.J. McCarthy, even though I'm not the biggest fan of, I have them in the spectacular tier, mainly just because of that. Next thing we have is the New England Patriots. Now, I'm not the biggest Milton Williams fan. I think he was an all-right player, but the Eagles' defense was so good that it elevated how he played. So with the Patriots, who do not have that great of a talented team, I think he's going to look lackluster and going to be overpaid at points in the year. Now, Carlton Davis is a good corner, and they got Harold Landry also from the Titans, and they got Mac Hollins, but that's not the receiver that the Patriots need. Now, they did re-sign Austin Hooper, former Falcon, and they really didn't lose anybody beside Davion, the defensive tackle, to the Saints. Now, they were a very big spender in the offseason, but I don't think the spending was actually justified, and I think they overpaid for a lot of guys. So I'm actually going to have them in just the good category because at least they didn't lose anybody, but I don't think they were very good moves in my opinion. Next thing we have is the Saints. They got the defensive tackle from the Patriots, Davion, like I just mentioned. Now they got Justin Reed from the Chiefs, which is a good safety, and they re-signed Tyrann Mathieu, and they got Chase Young, which Chase Young is just a name from college at this point. That's the only reason why he's getting money at this point. And they really didn't lose anybody too significant, but they really didn't make any headlines this offseason, so I just have them in the average offseason so far. Next thing we have is the Giants. Now, they re-signed Darius Slayton, and then they also got Javon Holland, who is a very good safety, and they also re-signed Tommy DeVito. So I don't think they can be average because they didn't lose anybody, but they also didn't make any big splashes, in my opinion, besides Javon Holland, who's an all-right safety. But the Giants are not going to compete anytime soon, and they still have to figure out their quarterback. They'll probably take Shedeur Sanders, so I'm very interested to see on that one. But I have them in the good, which I'm starting to notice I have so many people in the good. So I probably need to make a change on that, but I think that's good. Next thing we have is the Jets. Now, I almost want to put the Jets in spectacular because you got rid of all the poison in your locker room and Aaron Rodgers, but that's not fair because Aaron Rodgers was not the main problem, and the roster is very flawed. But I have them in the great category. I really like Justin Fields, and you got him at a really good price. And you got rid of Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams, Hassan Reddick, people like that who were just not good for the locker room, in my opinion. And they're going forward with Aaron Glenn, and he's going to try to establish his culture. So I think they are in a good direction. I have them in the great tier. Next, we have the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, they did lose Josh Sweat, Milton Williams, Isaiah Rodgers, and C.J. Gardner-Johnson, which I didn't really understand that one. I guess for cap reasons why they got rid of him, but I wasn't expecting them to get rid of him. Now, they extended Saquon Barkley, and they re-signed Zach Bond, which is very good for them, and they got A.J. Dillon. Now, I'm pretty sure they lost Mekhi Becton, if I don't remember correctly. Sorry on that, but I think they lost him as well. So they need a guard, which they did get Kenyon Green, but he's not great in my opinion. But I'm sure the Eagles will make him look good. And also, I forgot to mention that they got Azeez Ojulari from Georgia. So they got another Georgia Bulldog, and I'm sure he's going to flourish with the Eagles and all the other Bulldogs that are on that team. So I don't have them in the spectacular tier. I kind of want to put them in the great tier, but I'm going to put them in the good because they did lose a lot of pieces from their offseason, but their young players are going to develop over time, and Howie Roseman is going to find a way to finesse the draft and get the best players in the draft. Next thing we have is the Steelers. Now, they got DK Metcalf, and I'm very interested and going to be watching every game because DK Metcalf and George Pickens may try to fight literally everybody every single game multiple times. But they also got Darius Slay, and they re-signed Jalen Warden, so it's a pretty good offseason for them. Now, they did lose Justin Fields, which I don't know why they didn't go for him. And if they get Aaron Rodgers, they're automatically going to be in the trash category. I'm going ahead and telling you that right now because I do not think Aaron Rodgers is good for your NFL team anymore. But they also lost Najee Harris, but I guess they're going forward with Warden. But their offense is just not talented. I don't know why they just neglect offense. But maybe they could hit on somebody in the draft. They still need a quarterback, and I don't think Russell Wilson or Aaron Rodgers are going to save the day. So I have them in the average category because I really don't think that DK Metcalf and George Pickens is a good combination because they're very similar players, and they are also probably going to fight and get kicked out of like half the games this season. Next thing we have is the 49ers. Now, they got rid of Deebo Samuel, like I talked about in one episode. They lost Aaron Banks and Jalon Moore and Hufanga and Mitchell and Leonard Floyd and Greenlaw. So it was a very bad offseason because they're running into a cap situation. Now, they did release and then immediately picked back up Kyle Juszczyk, which I really love. And they also got Richie Grant from the Falcons, who is a very underrated safety in my opinion. Obviously, they lost a lot, but I don't have them in the trash, mainly because I think it was time to get rid of Deebo Samuel. But losing all those pieces on defense especially, and your offensive line, and you have to pay Brock Purdy, so your cap situation is not going to get any prettier. I have them in the back category. Next thing we have is the Seahawks, which I really don't understand what they're doing. Now, they got DeMarcus Lawrence, who is a very good run stopper, but they signed Sam Darnold to a hefty contract for no reason. I don't understand why they did that at all. They got rid of DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, and they obviously got rid of their quarterback and Geno Smith. Now, if they think Sam Darnold is the truth and it's for real, Good for them. I really don't. So I'm going to have them actually in the bad category because I do not like Sam Darnold for that amount of money at all. Next thing we have is the Buccaneers. Now they got Hassan Reddick. I really don't know what Hassan Reddick is anymore because he held out for half the year, and I don't really know if he's even good anymore. They also re-signed Chris Godwin to a very good contract, and they also re-signed Levante David, who is a veteran linebacker. So I have them in the average category. Didn't really make a big splash or like eye-catching move, in my opinion. And that goes the same with the Tennessee Titans. Really didn't do anything besides get Kevin Zeitler and Xavier Woods. And they also lost Landry, but I mean, their big offseason move is going to be who they take with number one. And they better take Cam Ward, in my opinion, because I don't want my starting quarterback drinking mayo in their coffee. And the next thing we have is the Washington Commanders. I bet people are expecting me to put them in the spectacular category, but I only have them in the great because I'm not a big fan of the Deebo Samuel move. And if you want to know more about that, just go to one of my previous episodes where I talk about the Deebo Samuel trade. But they got Laremy Tunsil, which I really, really love. And I think that's going to help Jaden Daniels so much. They also re-signed Bobby Wagner, Zach Ertz. Now, they did lose Jonathan Allen and Jeremy Chin, which I did not love. And like I said, I didn't love the Deebo Samuel move, but that's why they're not in the spectacular. But getting Laremy Tunsil was a big move for them, so I have them in the great category. And this is my ranking of every NFL team into tiers based off their offseason right before the draft. Now, obviously, once the draft happens, stuff is going to change in my opinion, but as of right now, this is what I have. And that's going to do it for this episode. If you enjoyed this episode, please give this a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Once we get to 50 subscribers, I am going to be having a special guest, so stay tuned for that if we ever get there. But also leave a comment on your opinions or anything you have to say to me, and I'll see y'all next week. Thank you for watching, and bye.